All right. Looks like I am streaming live and it should be ready to go. Close that down. Got it. It may ask you to confirm on your end. Hi, everybody. I am, oh, let's see what happens here because I've got two voices going with Monique at the same time. I'm hoping that that cleared it up. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'll wait 1 second to make sure my voice isn't overlapping my other voice. No, shoot. I may have fixed the problem. I'm no IT major, but all right, starting again. I can't make this up, y'all. This is my life. It's always something, and I'm just rolling with it. This is the beauty of learning presence and being in a headspace where I'm not going to let this kind of stuff bother me because this is not my deal. I'm not a professional YouTuber, but I'm going to give it a go and see what happens. So starting again. I am Monique Derouen, and I am here today with you guys. I want to offer this webinar to you and for those of you that are going to watch it on YouTube later, just as education, just for you to have an understanding of what goes on in the mind and the body whenever things are triggered. So I'm moving into a course here that's going to start here in the next week. And this is just going to be some foundational information for you guys to look over and just learn, what's going on inside the brain and the body and how things are triggered. We're going to talk about trauma, where it resonates from, how it's activated, and I'm going to walk you through a couple different types of trauma, things that I specifically specialize in. And we're going to finish up with just some information about how to move forward and how to get through some of these things after they've been locked in the body for so many years. So first off, I want to talk about what trauma is. And the easiest way to describe trauma from my experience, and again, this is not medical advice. This is just my personal story and the way that I work and the way that I do things. And I'm just sharing my experience with you guys. So trauma is a moment where not where the thing necessarily happened to us, but the moment where we are left alone to process the emotion or the confusion or the story and not have the support or the understanding from anyone around us. So this could look like someone getting bullied on the playground or something happening at school and then coming home and not understanding why the kids were mean to me or not understanding why the adult didn't step in and help me. And so now we're alone in the room and we might be 5, 10, 12, we might be in high school, we might be adults even, but we're in our own space and no one is there to validate the experience. No one is there to talk to us or understand what happens. And we've often been told silly things like, oh, the boy chasing you on the playground must like you. That's why he does that. Or they're just jealous. That's why they do that. And what happens is the body goes, oh, okay, whatever. But the mind doesn't necessarily believe that. And so when the mind doesn't believe something, it will mirror what's going on. And so fast forward, things happen, they mirror that. Someone else doesn't like me. Someone else does something against me. Someone else picks on me in school later on. A sibling does something, something happens at work, whatever. There is a trigger inside of us. And this person, this thing, this situation, whatever's going on is actually very neutral, but they are a catalyst that shifts it and sparks it up in me. Okay, and so the mechanism is fired at me and I might react, right? Or I might shut down. There are usually a couple things that we do whenever we get into these spaces. We either explode, we might make noise, we might slam a door, we might throw a dish, we might yell at somebody. Something like that will happen in the external world. We might implode, we might shut down, we might cry, we might shake, we might go hide in a closet. I was famous for crying in a closet or in another room where no one could see me because it wasn't safe. The other thing that we're often talked about is ejection. So we may eject with using drugs, alcohol. We may buffer with some sort of substance or something to distract us. We may want to go shopping. We may want to watch Netflix or eat ice cream. We may want to go watch pornography. Something that takes us out of presence. We may eject from life altogether. We may end our life. We may commit suicide. These are the things that we do when we have that reaction. So everything that I teach is from a place of presence and teaching you how to respond versus react, so that when these things occur, it doesn't take you out. So there will always be people in the world that are going to do things that are not in alignment with us. This is just the reality. Wanting them to be different only creates suffering for me. So they are who they are. How do I want to respond to it? How do I want to experience what's going on? And the problem comes in is when we've had trauma, especially big T trauma. And when I say big T trauma, I mean big things that have happened. And I'm going to break down the different types of trauma. There are 3 specifically that I really work with and that I'm very familiar with. And I want to talk about those specifically. And then there's little T trauma. And little T trauma could be something like somebody popped my balloon, or somebody took the last cookie when they said it could be mine. Things like that to a child's mind are not interpreted the same way that an adult is, because of the way that the brain grows, the transition, the adult or the age appropriate things that transition through our minds as we grow and as we age are very specific. And when these things are interrupted, there are little glitches and bleeps and problems in the circuitry. And basically what happens is the mind believes something is happening that may not be happening. And so these moments are frozen in our memory, and then they process in our body and they stay stuck in our body. And so much of the work that I do is because of unprocessed trauma that has been stuck in the body. The body keeps the score. There are several books about this kind of work. Your body is always going to believe what your mind tells it, regardless of what's actually happening, because the mind will create the story. The mind is here to keep this safe. The mind's job is to think thoughts and keep you safe. That's literally all it does. Keeps you alive and thinks thoughts. We think the thoughts are true. We think the thoughts are real. And so we believe them. And then our nervous system responds. We think a thought, we feel a feeling. From that feeling, we take an action and we get an end result. There is something that occurs, right? And so if we walk through these steps and we see what we're doing, it's kind of hard to digest sometimes, right? So I'm going to bring it back in, and I'm going to start with listing the types of trauma and what happens in the trauma body and in the nervous system, and what happens in the mind when it interprets or misinterprets trauma or a danger or something going on around you, and how these triggers create so much drama in our body and separation and pain points. And then if you guys follow what I do and you know my work, you know that when mind and body are separated in my world, physical illness and dis-ease, lack of ease, DIS-ease, will manifest in the tissue of the body. So when I am not in alignment, I may get a sore throat or a headache, or my digestion may be bad, right? So if I'm not honoring myself, I can possibly create physical ailments, physical manifestations of pain, inflammation, stress response in my body. We know that a lot of the doctor visits are from stress-induced problems, right? So if we understand that and we believe that to be true, why don't we work on the stress level? Why don't we work on the inflammation response that the stress level gives us in our body versus trying to do the other thing over here, right? So that's my theory. That's where I come from. I come from the TMS world. I come from the mind-body connection world. I come from psychosomatics and metaphysical language. I am a massage therapist, craniosacral therapist, nervous system specialist. I've been doing this for a long time, and I understand the physical part of the body But I also understand that the mind and body, when not in alignment, creates a little more chaos, a little more stress. Okay. So I just want to touch base on all of that stuff. I'm going to bring it back in. We're going to talk about some trauma now. So the three types of trauma that I work with, the first one is called PTSD, or shock trauma. And this is a sudden shock or a disturbing event. So this could be a car accident. This could be a sudden death. This could be an explosion, a hurricane. Some tornadoes just hit Louisiana again, right? So we understand that these things are traumatic events that shock us, okay? And when your nervous system gets stuck and you remain in the psychological shock, unable to process, unable to make sense of what happened, these emotions don't get seen about. And so what happens is we push them back into the body, they suppress into the nervous system, and then something later kicks in and mirrors that story and it comes up, okay? So again, shock trauma is something that happens instantly. We didn't see it coming. We didn't know it was happening. There was no understanding of why this would happen. A shock trauma for me was my father passed away very quickly in the middle of the night in his sleep. There was no evidence of anything wrong with him other than he had been saying his back was hurting and he was going to go to the doctor and see a spinal surgeon. He was convinced something was wrong with his spine. Now we wake up in the morning and I get a phone call and he's passed away. Now, this was a sudden thing. No one expected this to happen. So for months, I was trying to process this stuff and not really giving myself permission to grieve the loss. And I didn't understand. I thought I was a grown adult. I thought I could handle this. I do really well with death in the past. So I was certain I was just going to chug along and everything would be fine. But as I reflect back now, and it's been multiple years since he's passed, I can see I was in survival mode. I was in fight, flight, freeze. I was running and running and running and staying busy, trying to deflect what was going on. So that is the buffer, the distraction, right? I was doing something different. I also started drinking a lot. There was a lot of stuff going on. And so again, as I reflect back now, I could see what was happening, but in the moment, I didn't understand it. It's because my nervous system was just trying to stay alive. So unprocessed emotions, things that haven't been felt, will come up later on, okay? The second kind of trauma that I really have a lot of clients that I deal with is developmental trauma. And this is when overwhelming events cause the nervous system not to transition at the age appropriate manner. So again, if we look at the way children are raised, we know like up to the age of, so like 1 to 2 is very much nurturing and caring. They need a lot of attention. They need to be held. They need to be loved. They need to be safe, right? Because otherwise what happens when they get older, they don't know how to process these emotions. They've been left alone. They've been neglected or not cared for. And the body is in danger. Okay. So it believes that something is dangerous. And so it doesn't like it. It goes against it. And so it's really hard to stay in the body when all that kind of stuff is going on. With neglect or loss, the brain may not develop properly. This is real. Emotional confusion and lack of trust is what is present. And so we find this often in adult relationships. I can't trust them. They always show their true colors. We start to see things going on, right? Because our body says they're not safe, right? And you can't mindset your way out of this, guys. You can't just change thoughts. That is just deflecting into something else. And again, it will come back up. We must feel to heal. But when we're not given permission to feel, when these things happen, so as a child that maybe was sent to their room when they got in trouble or when they cried or when they caused a scene, rather than being nurtured, cared for, held, hey, I see you're struggling. I see you're having a problem. Rather than creating that connection, we put them away because they're too much or too loud or it's trouble or it's a distraction. And I get it. I am that mom that doesn't do that anymore. Obviously, my kids are grown at this point, but I was that mom. And I'm going to get into why here in a few minutes. A lot of this stuff is generationally taught. It is not right or wrong. It's just what we know. And so understanding this now, again, I have a different viewpoint. I have a different way to see it. And so we can change the way we're doing things now moving forward. So when a child under 2 is not cared for, held, that connection is not there, they will always feel lack of safety, okay, abandonment. And it's in our bones, it's in our nervous system, but it can be changed. I have a lot of clients that have worked with this and we've worked through it. I also have some stuff with this that came up in some of my work. And so I've been able to overcome it as well. We can create a new neural pathway. It is available, but we have to understand what's going on under the surface first and really not judge it. We have to really have compassionate understanding for what went on. And that's hard when we're in that pain cycle, or we're in that fear cycle, or we're in that victim mentality because of something that happened to us, right? And so trauma is real. It's very, very real. It's very, very hard, and it's heavy. And I don't want to make light of it, but we can come through it. And so I really just wanted to reiterate that for a moment. Emotional confusion. It's insane. And so we'll go on to the next part of trauma. The other one that I work with a lot of is generational trauma. And generational trauma can also come into what I call societal beliefs, or just anything that's going on in the environment. It doesn't necessarily have to come from your home environment. When I say generational trauma, I'm talking about an entire generation of people that do things a certain way, and it's not in alignment with the way we do things anymore, right? So there could be families that keep the same stories going, right? It's always hard. You have to work for blah, blah, blah. Money doesn't grow on trees. Anything that creates a limited belief could be considered generational stuff that's added in there, right? When mothers have endured trauma that's in their body and their memory remembers that, they often, not by choice, not consciously, pass these things down in utero, in bloodline. We're sharing the cord, the blood, the emotional response is there. So when I felt fear, my babies inside of me felt fear. And so I understand that now. I didn't know that that was a thing when I was younger. And again, this is part of the mission behind why I do the things I do, because I want to share the information and how to shift and grow if it doesn't serve you. If it serves you, I'm not your girl. I'm not for you. And that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're living a life and it doesn't serve you, let's have a talk. Because I've been there, I've been through it, and I have a lot of understanding and compassion for that space. But these stories have been passed down from generation to generation. This is not good for you. It's always hard. You've got to work hard for what you want. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of evil. If you eat that, it won't be good for you. Like all of these things. And there's lists and lists of that kind of stuff. And it's often done from a place of love and truly just wanting to, honor our family and who we are. But oftentimes in passing these things down, one mind perceives the information differently, which is where we're going to get into the brain here in a minute. So emotional responses in utero, as well as when children are grown. We might say, don't go to that end of town because it's dangerous. Don't go in the parking lot alone because someone may hurt you, or always look around your corner. So what we're doing is we're preparing the body for danger. We're preparing the body for something that's going to go on, and it may not actually be what's happening. So I'm going to go to that now. I'm going to talk a little bit about the brain. So there's different levels of trauma. There's different things that happen. Now, how the brain perceives the trauma is what's fascinating to me. And this is really what I love most about this work, is understanding these neural pathways, understanding these circuitries, understanding that sometimes the mind mistakes what it thinks is happening. Okay. So there are things that are etched into the memory, and sometimes they are mirrored or triggered by something going on. And this is why. I've been talking about this a lot on Facebook the last few days. You may have seen it already, but I want to kind of dive in a little bit deeper. So the amygdala, it's made to detect and react to danger. So when you're out in the world and you look out in the field, and I live in the mountains, so this really happens in my yard all the time. There's like moose and bear, right? So there's something out there and it moves or makes a noise. The amygdala is made to detect that, right? Like, oh, something's moving out there. It might be dangerous. Now, after trauma, it may be more sensitive to the possibility of threats. So my story is I stepped on a snake when I was a child. Snake bit me, went through the top of my sandals, and really didn't get me, really didn't get me. But the story behind it was so scary. And I was programmed and patterned by my mother to believe that it was a scary, scary event. And it really was. In the moment, she was panicked. In the moment, my life was in danger. In the moment, it really was bad. But fast forward 20 years, I'm not 4 years old standing outside with my flip-flops on anymore. But my body still thinks that every snake around the world is the most dangerous thing ever. Okay. And so anytime I would see one, I would panic to the point of vomiting. Okay. So my nervous system was responding to a trauma-induced story that was not happening in the now. There was no snake near me. It was way far away, but I could see it and my body would panic. And so the brain thought that danger was on me right now, just like it did when I was 4, but it actually wasn't what was happening in real time. So the second part is the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex here is what we make decisions from as well. It also helps in determining all of this stuff. The prefrontal cortex is not developed until we're like in our 20s. And so as children, we're just kind of absorbing the information, okay? And we kind of talked about it to 2. Now the next step is kind of like till 7, 8-ish, okay? And in that point, it's kind of like imagination states, right? Like we're mermaids, we're pirates, we're firemen, we're doing all the things, we're having all the fun. But what's happening is someone out here is like, yeah, that's not real, that's not true. And what happens to our little spirit? Kind of gets crushed, okay? We get upset, kind of hurts. So the prefrontal cortex helps control the amygdala, but it also has circuit interruptions when it believes danger is present, okay? So it often kicks up with anxiety. So again, I'm seeing it out there. It's so far away, but my mind says it's dangerous, scariest thing ever. It can eat me, it can kill me, like all the things, right? I'm not going to be a mom anymore. My kids are going to be homeless. Like it go all the way there. That's what my mind would do when I was triggered. And so the anxiety, think, feel. You guys that work with me, you know what I'm talking about here when I talk about the think, feel cycle. So I think a thought, I feel a feeling. If I don't take action, I stay in that spin. And then what happens? Nervous system rises up. It all bubbles up. Anxiety is present. I'm panicking, right? So prefrontal cortex, amygdala, they're both kind of firing and wiring. They're miscommunicating. They see the snake. It's dangerous. Oh my gosh, even though it's a mile away or 100 feet away or however far away it is, it's not wrapped around my foot right now. But my mind remembers the story. I was 4 years old. They put me in the ambulance, all the things, all the trauma, right? That's what's coming up. That's what's being triggered. Now, the third part of the brain that works with trauma, all these things together, it's going to be the hippocampus. And the hippocampus holds the memory, okay? So the memory of the snake, I'm seeing a new snake. It's not the same thing, but the hippocampus determines that it is in my mind, right? Because it's perceiving the information. So this will create confusion in someone with trauma. I'm your girl, full of trauma. Had it. The body will feel danger when the mind sees similar reflection from the memories, which is exactly what I just described. So it's out there. It could be a grass snake, by the way. I was bit by a water moccasin. Big difference. Not even the same thing. But that little grass snake that's literally this size, I will come out of my skin for, okay? So often shows up in relationships and fear-based situations. So again, I see the thing, nervous system's triggered, trauma comes up, responses there, more anxiety, mind, bing, 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 story comes up, that's not safe. These 3 combinations create the perfect storm for triggers to be activated in the body, which is exactly what I just talked about. Now, Fast forward several years. And so I would say this was last year. I live in Colorado now, and it is frozen. It is winter, and it starts to defrost. And here comes the snake out of the ground, right? Comes out of hibernation or wherever they go. And this little guy he was a decent size. He wasn't tiny, but he was moving so slow. Okay. Like he was literally frozen, like half inch a minute. It was obnoxious how slow it was moving. And I just stood over it and I just looked at it. And I thought, this is what I've been afraid of my whole life. And in that moment, I was present. I wasn't in the memory. I wasn't in the story. I was present in my body. I didn't let my mind take over. I said, I'm willing to sit here. And I had a little panic. I had a little nervousness come up, but I didn't throw up. I didn't run off. I didn't freak out. I just watched it. And I followed it and I followed it and I followed it. And I just watched it. And I saw that it didn't actually hurt me. It wasn't actually going to do anything to me. And in that moment, a new neural pathway was able to be connected because I believed it in my body. I didn't just think it. I actually embodied it. I believed it. And so I felt the panic. I was willing to sit there in the trigger response in the nervous system where it just kept coming up and kept hitting me. I was willing to sit there for a few moments. And even though it was uncomfortable, I didn't run away. And this was game changer. Okay. So understanding the different levels of trauma, understanding the different types of the brain and what's going on in the mind when we see things, being able to embody that and put it all together, I am able to not be triggered by certain things. Now, there are moments where something happens and it might shock me for a moment. I might get startled, but I'm not afraid of it. And it doesn't take me out. Okay. And so we want to understand that, again, the world is out there and things will always happen. There will always be the person that's the asshole. There will always be the idiot that doesn't know how to drive in what lane. There will always be the person that's abusive. That's just, it is the way life is. How do we want to show up in the experience of this? I personally want to show up with neutrality so that I can live my life in ease and flow, which is what we teach in the work that I do. We work from the punchline approach, which is the book that I work from. And in that, there are a few steps that we do. It is get present, get in my body. We unveil the unconscious stories to see what's actually happening. That's the course I'm about to start next week. I can't wait. It's so exciting. Then we navigate differently because once we understand what's actually going on in our body, we don't have to do the same routine. We don't have to go into the panic, the fight, flight, freeze, or the survival of it, right? And then we create. And then the last step is the how. And when we merge all these things together, we can live in neutrality, in ease. Now, there are things that I am definitely for or against. You know, there are things that bring me excitement, joy, pleasure. There are things that I don't want to do. But for the most part, being in an environment where we can be neutral with what's happening around us, even when the storm happens, even when the tornadoes start, even when the hurricane comes up, and not be taken out by it. Presence, unveil, navigate are going to be the most important things here. So there are several ways that I work with people on these things. There are several different things that I do to guide you, to help you unpack these unconscious stories, to get to what is triggering inside of you. And they are just a few simple steps, okay? And that is actually what I'm going to teach in the Understanding Triggers course. So if you are already registered for that, good job. You're going to get a notification this week. It's all going to get started on Monday. If you are not and you want information on it, I'm going to put the link in the YouTube comment, and you're welcome to join in. It's another webinar. It's a 6-week course, and it's going to be pretty amazing. We're going to talk about how these triggers are activated in the body, what happens to the body when they're activated, and how to process them in real time so that you don't keep pushing them back into the nervous system and let them reactivate later on. So there's a saying that I talk about a lot, and I know it's all over social media, and I know you guys are going to be familiar with it, but it's, if we don't heal from what cut us, we bleed on people that didn't. And that was so profound to me when I understood that and really took it in. I was reacting and throwing shit at people that did not hurt me. I was in relationships where I was being aggressive and fighting for my life for someone that didn't actually hurt me because of past stories, because of past trauma, because of past relationships and experiences. And I don't want to do that to them because they didn't actually hurt me. And I want to show up as that best version of myself in alignment. And so if this is something that interests you, if this is something that you'd like to talk about or get through, I am going to put my contact information in the link in the bottom of the YouTube. And so I would encourage you to reach out, schedule a consultation, join the Triggers course. I run a 6-week course every 2 months right now. And so they are only $297. This one starts on November 1. And it will be available. You will have replays and you will have support in the group. So if you are someone who has suffered with triggers or trauma and you want to work through that, feel free to reach out and let me know. You guys have a great day.